상상도 할 수 없는 일이 생겼어. 내게도 이런 일이다. 아무런 준비조차 못한 내게 네가 왜 그런지 모르겠지만 편해서 조면의 별 얘기를 다 얼마나 바보 같아 보였을까. 내가 매일 혼자 걷던 그 길도 바람에 흔들거리는 그 다리도 외롭게 보내던 주말도 이제는 너와 나, 그래 너와 나. All love, one love, 이게 사랑인 거야. 자꾸만 보고 싶어. 나는 fall in love, 내게 fall in love. 환하게 웃는 네가 좋아. 다시 또 fall in love. 시간이 가도 너와 지금 이 순간에도 네가 그리워. 안고 또 말하고 싶어. My love, one love, 이게 사랑인 거야. 자꾸만 기다려줘. 나는 fall in love, 내게 fall in love. 환하게 웃는 네가 좋아. 다시 또 fall in love.
Oh, hello, archivists. Hello. I'm out of frame. I'm on the wrong side of the screen. Oh no. Hello. There we go. Okay, I think we're good now though. Hello. I see there is both Amoongus and Smashmouth in the chat today. My feed? Wouldn't you like to know, you pervert? You don't need to see them, so there's no point in showing them to you, right? Anyway, today we are reading Chapter 3 of Scum Self-Saving System to keep typically feet are at the bottom of one's legs. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Son of Hacks, and hello, welcome. Yes, I realized that like I was able to stream once after hiatus, and then a bunch of things happened and I was not able to again. But it's good to see you all again. Yay! And hopefully I'll be able to get back to streaming on a regular schedule again. We'll find out. But we're reading Chapter 3 of Scum Self-Saving System to catch everybody up to speed on what's been going on so far. Giant, terminally online anti-fan of Shen Qingqiu, who is a giant anti-fan of a popular online novel called Proud Immortal Demon Way, which is a very trashy harem, like ecchi male power fantasy thing, dies from food poisoning and then is subsequently reborn into the role of the villain of the tale, the treacherous, horrible teacher of the main character, Shen Qingqiu. And his brilliant plan to not get the same fate that the villain does is to kiss some ass. However, things have been going not so great. First, he had to unlock the ability to even act out of character. And now, he's been poisoned by a invading demon armies. One of their strongest fighters, he pierced him with his armor that had a poison aptly named without a cure. So now in other words, his plan is going flawlessly. It's going great. Yes, Pillars of Heaven, which probably refer to protagonist Lao Binghe's giant weenie. Because as a very straight man, Shen Qingqiu is unusually obsessed with this person's end bits, but but yes, I'm glad you remembered that. And we're picking up at Chapter 3 favorite points, where it's right after the big battle with the Willy. Yes, it's his Willy. Oh. But we're picking up right after that in Chapter 3, favorite points. After sleeping for an unknown length of time, Shen Qingqiu finally woke, more dead than alive. Opening his eyes to the sight of a familiar white, gauzy curtains above his head, he knew that he was on Qingjing Peak, his quiet and peaceful residence. He took a deep breath, wanting to stretch, when he suddenly realized the door had opened and someone entered. Ming Fon had held a tray in both hands. Seeing Shen Qingqiu awake, he dropped the tray on the table and started to bawl, "Suisun, you're finally awake!" Another person was still standing outside. Lao Binghe lingered by the entrance like he wanted to come in, yet he hesitated. Ming Fan sobbed for a while, soaking a large patch of bedsheet before turning his shoulder. "Why are you still standing there? Don't you know that seeing you annoys Shizun?" he rebuked at Lao Binghe. Then he said to Shen Qingqiu, "I don't know what's wrong with that kid. He insisted on planting himself there like some kind of stick. He won't leave, no matter how much he shooed away." Shen Qingqiu waved his hand. "No matter. Let him in." I will go and get Li Shishu, Yangman Shibo, and Mu Shishu," Ming Fan said. "They said to alert them as soon as you woke up." After saying this, he scrambled to his feet and rushed outside. It seemed to Shen Qingqiu that he had slept for a very long time. Yui Qingyuan had already returned. As for Mu Shishu, that had to be Qian Caopeek's Mu Qing Feng. Qian Caopeek, oh god, I really hope I'm saying this right, specialized in medication and was proficient in the healing arts, so his presence was made absolute sense. Lao Binghe let Ming Fan pass, but even after Ming Fan had gone a distance, he wouldn't leave his spot. He only stared fixedly into the room, his fist clenched tightly the entire time. Shen Qingqiu slowly sat up. Do you have something to say? Then come in. Lao Binghe complied and entered the room. With a sudden thump, he fell to his knees before the bed. Shen Qingqiu stared at him in alarm. Wait a moment, system! What's going on? All I did was sleep for a bit. How did things end up like this? How long have I been asleep for? Is it like 10 years in the future or something? From his kneel, Lao Binghe raised his head, gaze fervent and full guilt. Shizhen, please forgive this disciple's foolishness and ignorance up until now. Foolishness and ignorance? You could describe a lot of people with those words, but certainly not Lao Binghe, right? Originally, this disciple was under the impression that Shizhen didn't care about him at all. Only after the third match did I understand what painstaking effort Shizhen had put in. No, your original master really didn't care about you, Shen Qingqiu thought desperately. He earnestly wished you dead, really. Although, exactly what painstaking efforts of mine have you noticed? Say it out loud, I'm very curious to know. Oh, I hope so. That would actually be cute to do it around like a campfire, but that would require like going outside, wouldn't it? I prefer to stay in the library, and the book is glad to oblige, I believe. But Lao Binghe did not continue speaking on this topic. He only said in earnest, From this day forth, this disciple will devote himself to carrying out his duty and serving Shizhen with all his heart, obeying only Shizhen's esteemed commands. Shen Qingqiu studied him with complicated expression. All the past mistreatment and abuse completely forgotten because he saved Lao Binghe once? Weren't these failure points a little too easy to farm? To no surprise, at the time, he was unable to understand the course of Lao Binghe's thoughts, with their hundreds and thousands of twists and turns. Shen Qingqiu was silent for a moment. As long as you understand. First, why don't you get up? He still didn't understand this in the slightest. Binghe, what exactly did you realize? He watched Lao Binghe slowly stand, yet the boy remained unwilling to leave. Instead, he seemed bashful, as if there was still something to say. Is there something else? Shen Qingqiu asked. Shizhen had slept for many days and only just woke up. Said Lao Binghe. I was wondering, do you perhaps have an appetite? In truth, strictly speaking, Shen Qingqiu had long held himself in a state of inedia. Even if he didn't eat, he would be fine. But he was unable to resist his nature, which craved good food. As soon as he heard there were things to eat, his eyes shone with desire. Quite a bit. Very much so. Lao Binghe dashed off to the kitchen. For the past few days, every couple of hours, he remade a serving of congee, and now it could finally be put to use. After bringing the congee to the table, still steaming hot, Lao Binghe helped Shen Qingqiu to sit up on the bed, so solicitous it made the hair on the back of one's nape stand up. He had just come short of spoon-feeding Shen Qingqiu, and a streak of goosebumps ran down Shen Qingqiu's forearms. He ate a few mouthfuls using the ladle himself, and all the while Lao Binghe remained standedly by his bedside, silently watching him. Yeah, I want congee too. I love it. It's great. I love most porridges actually. The congee's really good because it's made from rice, so it's extra sticky. It's kind of like polenta in that, like, if you let it freeze overnight and then you and then you cut it up in the morning and then you fry it, it's really good. Oh yeah, definitely. Scuff up the rice to water ratio and you get some really good congee. I prefer to make it in like an air pressure cooker because the air pressure squishes it. It gets squishy and gooey. I love it. Shen Qingqiu thought for a moment when he was hit on by sudden realization. It's quite good, he said, reservedly offering few words of praise. It wasn't just quite good. Even Qingqiu Peak's name, Clear and Tranquil, told you that this branch tended towards the fresh and light, and the style of their cooks followed this principle. After eating their food for so long, Shen Qingqiu's taste buds had become dull as dishwater. Even though the bowl in his hand was full mere congee, perhaps it was an issue of ingredients and technique, but compared to the watery, meager congee that he had recently, it was on an entirely different level. Snow-white congee rice, finely chopped scallions, delicious minced pork, and shredded ginger in just the right amount, all at the perfect temperature. It had been too long. Shen Qingqiu's body wanted nothing but to weep. At this praise, Lao Binghe's eyes shone. If Shizen likes it, may I give it to him every day, with variations? Shen Qingqiu choked on the spot. Lao Binghe rushed to pat his back. Shen Qingqiu waved him off, expressing that he was fine. He was only a little shocked. Lao Binghe's excellent cooking skills were his foremost lady killer technique. Shen Qingqiu had never thought he would have the rare honor to eat as only a few key harem members in the original work got to. Cuisine a la Lao Binghe. Even more shocking was that line. This one. I'll give it to you every day, with variations. Wasn't that what Lao Binghe used to coax several spoiled young ladies into willingly and ecstatically entering his harem? Eating whatever you want is fine, but saying whatever you want is not. As Shen Qingqiu's expression had grown strange, Lao Binghe was slightly uneasy. Shizen dislikes it? He asked. You made me free food! Whoever disliked this would be an idiot! Shen Qingqiu said amiably. This master likes it very much. From today onward, I'll leave this to you. Finally, he didn't need to resign himself to eating the insubstantial watery fare. As the oh-so-mighty Qingqiu Peak Lord, why didn't he have the privilege of a private kitchen? Oh yeah, the secret to put your guns on homemade congee is to add a little bit of sesame oil too. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Alright. Having received approval, Lao Binghe once again blossomed like a spring flower. Shen Qingqiu watched him bloom, and without knowing why, his hand suddenly itched, wanting to pat the head again. Was it possible that Binghe's head had a special magnetic field? That would explain why he couldn't control himself. After sending a happily beaming Lao Binghe away, returning his goodwill by using him as hard labor, Shen Qingqiu called on the system. Is the scenario at the Endless Abyss unavoidable? He asked. If Lao Binghe fails to complete the Endless Abyss scenario, 10,000 satisfaction points will be deducted, said the system. Upon hearing that, Shen Qingqiu once again, out of habit, spat up a fountain of blood. Afterwards, he wiped his mouth. Whatever, he spat out so much blood he was used to it at this point. This was inevitably logical. If Lao Binghe wasn't shoved into the Endless Abyss, then he wouldn't be able to activate his golden finger. If the protagonist didn't become overpowered, then where was the satisfaction? Therefore, the Endless Abyss scenario was unavoidable. And as this novel's number one loser, number one scum villain, the execution of this glorious task naturally, absolutely, inescapably fell to Shen Qingqiu. Yet unwilling to resign himself to this fate, Shen Qingqiu asked again and ended up sighing. Still unable to give up completely, Lao Binghe, who was currently like a little son, who was destined to fall and become the brooding, cold-blooded demon youth, even a transmigrator like Shen Qingqiu, who by all rights ought to have access to chi powers, was unable to change this inevitability. He had been designated to be the man who threw the protagonist into the Endless Abyss, thereby catalyzing his overpowered legendary journey. This job's opportunities for growth were really terrible. If Shen Qingqiu failed to do this, he would lose 10,000 satisfaction points. He couldn't become more thoroughly dead than that. But if he did do this, once Lao Binghe activated his golden finger, he definitely wouldn't let him off. The work was difficult, the pay was meager, the benefits were non-existent. What the hell was up with this? Lao Binghe hadn't left for long when several Shen Qingqiu's sex siblings came to visit. Water break. Shen Qingqiu lay on the bed reading a novel hidden inside a copy of Dao Jing. I'm actually looking at the footnotes for this. More commonly known as Dao Jing, a famous classical text on philosophy and a region of Taoism by Lao Tzu. Lao Chi? Okay. Okay. So basically, he's hiding a trashy novel inside of actual text that make him look cool. It's basically changing the dust jacket. Yeah. So basically, he switched the dust jacket on on the Bible on a cover of a true crime novel or some shit, or a cheesy light novel or something. Just to make himself look sophisticated and well educated, because this asshole. Oh my goodness. When Yui Qingyuan entered, he shut the books without missing a beat so that the novel was tucked inside, with the Dao Jing's cover proudly exposed. He tried to get off the bed, but Yui Qingyuan hurriedly stopped him. "Don't move so carelessly," he cautioned. "You shouldn't leave the bed just yet. Keep lying down." Yui Qingyuan turned behind him to Mu Qingfan. "Mushiri, come take another look." While Shen Qingqiu was unconscious, Mu Qingfang had already diagnosed him and provided treatment. This visit was likely for further prognosis. Shen Qingqiu held out his wrist. "Untroubling, Mushiri," he said politely. Mu Qingfang startled briefly, but nodded, sitting by the bed and putting his fingers on Shen Qingqiu's pulse. With his medical expertise as the Peak Lord of Qiankao Peak, no matter how complicated the case, he only needed an instant to make a diagnosis and provide a prescription. But he conscientiously remained there for a long while before finally removing his fingers, his expression solemn. "How is he?" Yui Qingyuan asked. As the patient in question, Shen Qingqiu showed no restraint. "So, can this poison be cured or not?" Liu Qingge shook his sleeves, sitting down next to the table with a humph. "It's called without a cure. What do you think?" Shen Qingqiu sighed. "Then Mushiri might as well tell me. How many years do I have left? How many months? Or how many days?" Mu Qingfang shook his head. "Even though it's without a cure, its effects can be suppressed." His voice was even, neither quiet nor loud, but Shen Qingqiu felt like he'd hit the jackpot. Even though this poison was called without a cure, in truth there was a remedy. In the original work, at the Immortal Alliance Conference, with its twist after twist, a lovable, graceful, and subdued little Shimei from another sect was hit with this rare poison. However, importantly, she was the protagonist woman. Was there ever a stallion novel where the male lead let his own woman be poisoned to death? If there was, then he would be a subpar wish fulfillment protagonist, and that would be a shitty failure of a stallion novel. The cure was incredibly simple. Let us review the developments in the original work. Due to the irresistible power of the plot, in order to save the male lead, whom she'd known for less than 2 hours, this graceful little Shimei let herself be hit by a demon's underhanded trick, and the poison contaminated her body. Liao Binghe felt an absolute obligation to save her, and therefore he took on the burden of looking for a cure for the graceful little Shimei. It just so happened that deep within the mountains where the Immortal Alliance Conference was being held, there grew a mythical, 1,000-year-old flower. Sorry, Shen Qingqiu had already forgotten what exactly the name was, whatever flower or the whatever leaf, because the number of mythical flowers in Proud Immortal Demon Way numbered at least the hundreds, with every single one at least 1,000 years old, and when you add on all the mystical grasses and mystical trees, who the hell could remember all those names? Airplane shooting towards the sky? Do you think mythical flowers are like Chinese cabbages on sale? Leave mystical flowers at the least a little of the dignity that comes with being rare and precious. Liao Binghe was sure that this legendary flower would cure the poison within the graceful Shimei's body. He put on a tremendous amount of effort into picking it just for her. Just doing that took 3 days, 30 chapters. For those 3 days, they journeyed to pick the flower while fighting monsters, and through exchanging of flirtatious glances, they developed a deep sense of camaraderie. By the time Liao Binghe had finally managed to pick the flower, the graceful Shimei's condition had worsened, her entire body fragile and devoid of strength. The two of them were overjoyed, and they hurried to let the graceful Shimei eat the flower raw. However, it was ineffective. The poison wasn't cured. Their hearts sank. The girl thought, "Since I'm about to die, I must leave behind some memories to ensure my life won't have been in vain. I don't have many days left after all, so I won't suppress my feelings anymore." Then, using her weak and fragile body, she pushed Lao Binghe down. Lao Binghe put up a brief show of resistance before telling himself, "She did it all for my sake. I don't have the heart to reject her final wish." He yielded, still half reluctant, and went along with it. And then, in the end, how was the poison cured? After the down and dirty scene, the girl's poison was naturally cured. Was it ridiculous? Cliché? Implausible? But it was satisfying, right? Ridiculously satisfying? So ridiculously satisfying. Look, Lao Binghe was both a human and demon blood, right? And the demon half of his bloodline came from the number one saintly ruler, from the heavenly demons of old. A wee little demonic poison wasn't even strong enough to get struck between Lao Binghe's teeth, and he instantly absorbed and digested it during their, Incidentally, he even absorbed the nutrients of the mythical flower the girl had just eaten, and so his martial ability once again made great progress. Shit! The so-called protagonist privilege was that even if he stepped in dog shit, there probably would have been a hidden skull or elixir within it. As Shen Qingqiu thought back on the segment of Proud Immortal Demon Way, his facial expression kept changing erratically. He failed to notice when even the others addressed him. Yue Qingyuan had to repeatedly call his name many times before finally returned himself. What? Mu Qingfeng passed him a piece of paper. Every month, take these 4 medicines. Then circulate your spiritual energy with someone who has high quantities of it. This will assist you in maintaining a regular spiritual circulation. If you do these things, you shouldn't have any problems. He paused for a moment. The only thing is, I'm afraid that from today onward, Shen Qingqiu, occasionally your spiritual ki will at times suddenly stagnate, or you may suffer other abnormalities in your circulation. The other 3 people in the room all paid close attention to his expression. One must remember that cultivators, the stagnation of spiritual circulation was a profoundly terrifying problem, especially if it cropped up during a duel between expert practitioners, where a single slip-up could mean your life. Little did they know, Shen Qingqiu was immediately satisfied with the result. For somebody in a Scum villain role to be poisoned with something like without a cure and still be able to live, it was giving him too much confidence. He knew that going at it with the protagonist could have cured the poison, but would he do that? Could he? Yue Qingyuan sighed. Had I known any of this would come to pass, I would have not left the mountain. Shen Qingqiu thought his tone was too solemn. The Immortal Alliance Conference has always been a massive event that various sect leaders must work together to organize, he hurried to say. How could you have not gone, Shishong? This happened due to the demon's underhanded deceits and my own carelessness. You must not hold yourself accountable. If he didn't say that clearly here, given Yue Qingyuan's personality, he might never leave the mountain ever again. He'd stay and defend Kanchong Mountain sect to his last. That was all entirely possible. To his surprise, Mu Qingfeng also guiltily declared, No, the fault is all mine. If I hadn't failed to realize that there was a demonic invasion, and my skills weren't too poor to fully cure Shen Qingqiu, it wouldn't have come to this either. No, it has nothing to do with you two, Shen Qingqiu insisted. Come to think of it, he was a bit indelicate and smashed a giant hole in the ground before Chongding Hall with that hammer. The 3 of them devoted into jumbled apologizing and blame-taking, the scene both chaotic and comical. It left Shen Qingqiu both touched and embarrassed, his entire body breaking out into goosebumps and his scalp going numb. Oh, hello, Uzma! Hello! Hi! It's all good. If you need to lurk, you can lurk. If you don't want to stick around, you don't have to stick around. But it's very nice that you did pop in. So hello! Liu Qingge stared out the window, face expressionless. He waited until they exhausted themselves, then finally took a sip of tea and said, This matter must remain secret to all but the 12 Peak Lords. If outsiders became aware that the Peak Lord of Kanchong Mountain Sect's second peak had such a deadly weakness, things would be unfun, to say the least. All 3 others naturally understood this. Do you think that the burden of a Peak Lord would be too heavy, Qingqiu? Asked Yue Qingyuan. The original Shen Qingqiu would most likely have suspected that Yue Qingyuan was trying to undermine his authority or something of the sort. However, the current Shen Qingqiu knew that Yue Qingyuan was genuinely worried about him overworking himself and damaging his health, and he rushed to respond. Zhongmen Shishong, really, don't worry about me anymore. I haven't been crippled to that extent. He smiled. For now, my hands, feet, and mouth all still work, and I have my cultivation. I'm entirely satisfied. They then discussed a variety of details of the demon invasion before Yue Qingyuan and Mu Qingfeng took their leave. Shen Qingqiu watched them go, thinking it all terribly funny, yet he also felt an unutterable warmth and peace. Even though his fellow disciples' personalities were all different, with some easy to get along with, some difficult, they all breathed as one. Though split into 12 peaks, whenever something went wrong, they were all a dependable family. Except the original Shen Qingqiu. Liu Qingge put down his tea, which had long gone ice cold. If it weren't for your body's lack of ghostly ki, I would have definitely suspect you've been possessed. And the one who remained just happened to be one of the difficult ones. On a certain level, your guess is very correct. Liu Qingge continued. You saved me from the Lingxi caves. That in itself is inconceivable. During the demon attack, you also rescued some nameless disciple and almost lost your life. You were poisoned to the point of damaging your spiritual energy levels, and you should be furious, yet you peacefully accepted it. Someone else doing it wouldn't be so strange, but you doing it upturns everything. Shen Qingqiu absolutely didn't want to discuss the issues of his own OOC personality with Liu Qingge. He called Ming Fan to refresh his tea, then leaned back and smiled. Nameless. That's only for now. That disciple of yours, his base is indeed excellent, Liu Qingge said. However, a fair number of his level of aptitude are invited into the large sects every year, and in the end, the number who can become truly outstanding is less than 1 in 1,000. Shen Qingqiu suddenly sensed danger. What if Liu Qingge became a stumbling block on Lao Binghe's journey to become overpowered, and during a confrontation between the two of them, it was KO'd in a snap? For everyone's sake, he needed to warn Liu Qingge. Believe me, he said patiently, earnestly, this disciple of mine will definitely be a success. I hope when Liu Shiri has a chance, you can give him a little support and guidance as often as possible. Ming Fan was half dead from depression. He'd only come in to refresh the tea, yet he'd been forced to hear Shen Qingqiu, his ally in torturing a shared enemy, heap praise after praise upon Lao Binghe. The level of frustration he felt was akin to that of the confidant who for years always cursed a little bastard with you, suddenly went and coupled up with the same little bastard you tormented together. Repulsed, he immediately decided to go and be repulsive with others. A stormy Ming Fan found Lao Binghe in the kitchen, pondering over what food to make Shen Qingqiu the next morning. Ming Fan showered him with verbal abuse before issuing a series of commands. Go chop some wood! Chop 80 bundles! Fill the entire woodshed! Fetch water! The water jars in all our rooms are empty! Are you blind? Can't you see? But Qishong, if the woodshed is filled, where will I sleep? Lao Binghe asked, perplexed. Ming Fan stomped his foot, spittle flying everywhere. Isn't it flat in here? Isn't the floor enough? I just filled the water jars in your rooms today. The water isn't fresh anymore. Redo it. Refill them all. In the past, some grievance and bitterness might have sprouted in Lao Bing's head, but today his attitude was completely different. In his eyes, these were all training opportunities. He already had such a good teacher who thought of everything for him, who was even willing to sacrifice his life for him, right? What training could he not overcome? What suffering could he not withstand? Lao Binghe didn't say another word. He turned on his heel to get ready for work. Ming Fan could derive not even a little satisfaction from his reaction. Instead, he felt even more frustrated. He stormed away while cursing, I really can't understand what that brat caught Shizen's eye, or Shizen to suddenly see him in a new light. Is success outstanding? Even if that brat bewitched Shizen with some potion, Liu Shishu still won't guide or support him. Unthinkable. Bleh! Although Ming Fan cursed incessantly as he went, his voice wasn't loud. But how could Lao Binghe, with his blindingly fast progress and naturally sharp 5 senses, not hear? Ming Fan's mutterings were largely harsh words and phrases, but in the mist he touched on the keywords, and in an instant Lao Binghe took those bits and pieces to guess most of the whole picture. So Shizen had actually spoken about him like that in front of Liu Shishu. The feeling of having someone speak about you so highly, somewhere you couldn't see, that feeling was truly indescribably wonderful. Warmth suddenly surged in Lao Binghe's heart, and the more it surged, the stronger it became, gradually flowing through his entire body. Lao Binghe felt like a steady strength had taken root somewhere in the depths of his heart and was starting to bud. Even his hand, carrying the heavy wooden bucket, seemed to become stronger. At this time, not only did Lao Binghe not feel like other people were making things difficult for him, his expression became joyful and satisfied. If Shen Qingqiu were there, he would definitely have suspected that, within the depths of his heart, Lao Binghe was actually an extreme masochist. However, Shen Qingqiu was astoundingly oblivious to the fact that, thanks to the divine wingman abilities of his useless teammate Ming Fan, Lao Binghe's favor had risen again to a new high. For the first time, being Shen Qingqiu was lying down in elation. That day, the always lofty Qingjing Peak's doorstep almost broke from all the feet rushing across it. The various peak lords all brought their disciples to visit, along with gifts of condolence. After all, during Xia Huling's armed provocation, the rainbow bridges had been severed, and Qianding Peak had been sealed by a barrier. They had been unable to intervene, so the burden of the fight had fallen to Shen Qingqiu, who had been the sole representative of the older generation. Anyhow, Kanchong Mountain hadn't lost too much face, but no matter whether their past relationship had been good or bad, the Peak Lords absolutely had to come and express poor sentiments. Shen Qingqiu calmly received their greetings and used the chance to learn the faces of several Peak Lords he hadn't met yet, while also taking the opportunity to make some small talk and strengthen his relationships. That night, he was on cloud 9 as he thought, "Finally, I can have a peaceful night's sleep." However, 4 hours later, I'm actually going to take a intermission real quick so I can refill my water, because I made the poor decision of having a very small glass. So I'm going to do a quick intermission. I recommend you all get water as well. We'll be right back. Archive is right back. Okay, we're back. I was not kidding about the water. We're on page 150, and the chapter ends on page 190. We have 40 more pages to go. Woo! So I'm gonna need a lot of water. That night he was on cloud 9 as he thought, "Finally, I can have a peaceful night's sleep." However, 4 hours later, peaceful night's sleep, my ass! Shen Qingqiu stood in the middle of a stretch of chaotic nothingness and stared into the endless horizon. He'd definitely been drunk on satisfied smiles, comfortably sinking into sleep in his bed. So could someone please explain why he'd be dragged into this space? Shen Qingqiu really wished he had a gong, one he could ring to summon the system so he wouldn't need to always yell at the top of his lungs within his mind, "System? Are you online?" The system provides you with 24-hour service. Where is this? What's the situation? This is a world within a dream. Of course, I know this is within a dream realm, said Shen Qingqiu. Tell me, how could such abstract scenery exist in reality? I'm asking why I'm here. Come on, he thought. Please don't let it be what I'm thinking. But this world really wouldn't give him a break. Just as he thought, don't, in the next second he saw a figure that was unbearably familiar. Lao Binghe stood before him, bewildered, in the middle of a never-ending wasteland. He also seemed entirely lost as to why he appeared here. After a moment of bewilderment, Shen Qingqiu's form came into his view. Lao Binghe startled, then dashed over happily, like a chick who had seen its mother hen. What kind of shitty analogy was that? I want to say that was in the book itself, and I did not say that. Shizun! Lao Binghe had already been trapped in this world for a long time. He was instantly excited by the sight of Shen Qingqiu and called him to him repeatedly, again and again. As soon as Shen Qingqiu laid his eyes on him, he recognized this place and what scenario he'd been thrust into. Instantly, all Shen Qingqiu's hopes turned to dust, and even as a shower of tears rained down on his heart, he patted Lao Binghe's shoulder. I hear you. There's no need to call my name so many times. Yes, Shizun, Lao Binghe said hurriedly. Why are you here too? Do you know where we are? Being lazy, Shen Qingqiu directly echoed the system's lines. This is a world within a dream realm. Then why am I here? Lao Binghe asked again. Anyone else being here is a strange thing, while your presence is quite natural, said Shen Qingqiu. This is your dream realm. Mine? Lao Binghe startled and backed up a step, looking at the endless, desolate land and sky. My dream realm actually looks like this? The dream realm, to one's view of the world, reflected one's heart. Lao Binghe was so young, yet his mindscape wasn't filled with the red flowers and the green willows, but all this bleak scenery. One couldn't help but feel sorrow. Shen Qingqiu pretended to ponder for a while. This is not an ordinary dream world. I'm afraid that while you were unaware, someone tampered with it. The waves of spiritual energy within this dream are strong and unstable, though this master was inadvertently pulled in by you. This disciple is useless and involves Shizun once again. Lao Binghe's face was ashamed, but he considered this carefully. Exactly who would tamper with my dream realm? Shen Qingqiu was ready with an answer, fully enjoying the experience of divulging spoilers. No need to think too hard. The borders of this dream realm churn with demonic chi. An entity who could use such crude techniques must be a demon. Lao Binghe was unsurprised, and the words only deepened his hatred towards the race. The ways of demons are truly poisonous. Shen Qingqiu wondered what sort of expression Lao Binghe would make in the future, thinking back on those words, once learned of his own demonic heritage. Not necessarily poisonous, Shen Qingqiu said with a smile. Perhaps their intentions are the exact opposite. Someone not in the know couldn't hope to comprehend the words spoken from his omniscient perspective. Lao Binghe didn't understand. What did his master mean? But Shen Qingqiu's smile seemed profound, and the tail of his sentence was inflected lightly upward in a somewhat teasing tone. It was the sort of hint that made people's imaginations run wild. Lao Binghe stopped there, not daring to think about it further. In truth, Shen Qingqiu didn't intend to tease. He thought himself very straightforward. The one who tampered with Lao Binghe's dream was Xia Huling. Though she did have some harmful intentions, her underlying motive was obvious. Naturally, she was driven by a young girl's secret yearning for love. Otherwise, she would direct her aggressions toward others, not specifically Lao Binghe. Demons were compelled to viciously bully the person they liked. Only if the object of their affection failed to die would the demon accept them. If the target died, that meant they were useless and not worth nursing any lingering affections for. This dream realm is rather complicated, said Shen Qingqiu. An ordinary nightmare technique couldn't trap me. I can dispel those with a mere thought, but this dream realm is truly meticulously constructed. I'm afraid that until the core of the illusion is destroyed, no one will be able to leave. Even Shizun will be trapped in this dream realm forever? Lao Binghe asked, anxious. Shen Qingqiu answered him. You will be too. Lao Binghe's mind jolted, his face going red to white. It's all this disciple's fault. The situation is what it is. There is no use decrying it, said Shen Qingqiu. We should devise a solution as soon as possible, dispel the barrier, and take our leave. Lao Binghe silently nodded and followed behind Shen Qingqiu as they headed toward the dream realm's border. Shen Qingqiu's face was smooth and unchanging, but his mind was a stormy sea. He was having an intense look back and forth with the system. System alert. You are now entering the important subplot scenario, the Dream Demon Mang Mo's Barrier. During this subplot, please make sure to assist Lao Banghe in defeating Mang Mo's illusion. Otherwise, 1,000 satisfaction points will be deducted. There it was again, always deducting satisfaction points, and every time it was a heart attack-inducing number. After assiduously working for so long, Shen Qingqiu had only managed to scrounge a couple of satisfaction points here and there while the system could remove 1,000 points in a single deduction. Was that really fair? As a person, no, as a system, you shouldn't be so inflexible. That wasn't the main point, though. The main point was that this was the wrong script. Let us summarize the scenario's original setup. Lao Banghe was pushed into Mang Mo's sphere of influence. Before the danger struck, he instinctually sought protection and pulled the person he trusted most into the barrier with him. Shen Qingqiu urgently called to the system. Master, good master, esteemed master, there's been a bug, right? In this section, Lao Banghe should be cozying up with a maiden, and the maiden is responsible for unraveling his complexes and using love to help him defeat his inner demons. How come I've been thrust into this role? Where's the promised deep and emotional heart-to-heart where she's accepted into his harem? Where is the promised little Shimei who refuses to leave him for either in life or in death? Our inspection failed to find the bug. The system is running normally. No bug. That meant in this scenario, Shen Qingqiu either had to carry out that role or die. This was the butterfly effect. Originally, the one who was pulled into Lao Banghe's nightmare was Ning Ying Ying. As Lao Banghe's closest, most trusted confidant on changing Peak in the early story, this gate-crashing, intimacy-building task was clearly her job. What was happening now? How had that hat of closest, most trusted confidant nonsensically been landed on Shen Qingqiu's head? I would like to express that I'm overwhelmed by this honor, but I don't want to accept the special designation. What's wrong? Lao Banghe asked in concern, seeing his unreadable expression. Shen Qingqiu promptly pulled himself together. Nothing's wrong, he said calmly. This master was thinking that demons who can manipulate dream realms often target the weakness of the human heart. You must be vigilant, on your guard. Lao Banghe nodded, his expression firm. This disciple definitely won't allow Shifu to be dragged in again. This was miserable. Not only had Shen Qingqiu been thrust into a dangerous situation, on top of that, he had to assume the task of playing off the maiden's role. Shen Qingqiu actually didn't want to charge through a mountain of knives or a sea of fire with the male lead to confront the terrifying Master Mang Mo, while also blocking knives from it and even providing free psychological therapy. That said, complaining was useless. In the past, when he had been faced with this kind of situation, his habit had been to cuss out the airplane shooting towards the sky. But honestly, Great Master Airplane was also innocent. He was a proper upright stallion novel author, and he definitely wouldn't have wanted something like this to happen in his work. A healthy maiden being replaced by a scum villain? How disheartening. Ordinary readers would throw the book to the floor. The two of them kept walking, the clouds above and the scenery around them like a kaleidoscope, sometimes strengthening and twisting, and other times shattering into thousands of fragments, always erratic. The picture formed by the world they had walked through was exceedingly eerie, like the people had been illustrated by Da Vinci, while the backgrounds had been illustrated by Picasso. The style clash was extraordinarily intense. Suddenly, within the dense layers of cloud emerged the buildings of a city. They stopped in their steps. Lao Banghe looked at Shen Qingqiu, waiting for a signal. Counter soldiers with arms and floods with earth and dams, Shen Qingqiu muttered to himself. We seal with whatever situations arise as appropriate. Forward. As they walked to the city gates, Lao Banghe raised his head, his expression becoming slightly puzzled. Shen Qingqiu knew very well what he was thinking, that this city looked very familiar. Of course it was familiar. This was the city Lao Banghe wandered while homeless during his childhood. The city gates naturally had no guards defending them and slowly opened by themselves. Shen Qingqiu let himself inside. The dream realm was frightening in its realism. When abstract, it was so abstract that it became blobs of colors. When photorealistic, it was so photorealistic that it was as to be indistinguishable from reality. The city streets, markets, residents, vendor stalls, every single one was intricate enough to make your hair stand on end. Lit brightly with lamps, with people coming and going. From a distance it looked bustling and lively, but once Shen Qingqiu grew grew close. Even though he had long prepared himself, his heart almost escaped his ribcage. These people moving about were, to a one, faceless. Every visage was a blurry mass, features unclear, and none of them made a sound. They didn't seem like living people at all, yet they still milled around, wandering back and forth. The entire city was deadly silent, its busyness entirely uncanny. Lao Binghe had never seen a scene like this. "Shizun?" he said aghast. "What are these things?" Shen Qingqiu was panicked a little from the terror, but he still took on the duty of being an expository encyclopedia. "This is an illusionary city created via a nightmare. In the dream realm, one can create inanimate objects such as buildings and trees, but not living people. At most they can be fashioned to this extent, speechless monsters that lack noises and faces. Even so, they are able to construct something on the scope of the city, and to make it nearly like this unto reality. I'm afraid it can only be one person." Lao Binghe was incredibly cooperative, and he humbly sought instruction. "One person?" Meng Mo. Meng Mo, the dream demon, was the boss of this instance of a dream realm. Meng Mo's true identity was that of a famously brilliant and accomplished elder among demons. Several hundred years ago, a bout of divine punishment had destroyed his physical body, but his powerful spirit had endured, undamaged. From then on, he had become a parasite within others' dream realms, subsiding by absorbing their spiritual energy and vitality. At the same time, he was also one of the protagonist's teachers on his road to becoming a demon. Thus, we can give him a more direct and more intimate nickname: the Portable Grandfather. The Portable Grandfather. Take him where you go. He fits in your dream pocket. The Portable Grandfather. Portable Grandfather. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Mangmo was the one who, after Lao Binghe broke through the barrier, formulatically took a liking to the protagonist, formulatically taught him everything about his lost arts, and formulatically, from that point forth, occasionally helped the male lead think up plans for taking care of Small Fry. Granddad! Yes! Granddad! Da 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 da. Granddad. No, that's Granddad. Granddad. No, that's Granddad. That's not Flintstones. That's Granddad. Portable Granddad. Portable Granddad. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Lao Binghe still wanted to ask a few more questions, but then his eyes involuntarily slept through the crowd and froze for a split second. Despite knowing the answer, Shen Qingqiu asked, "What's wrong?" "Faces!" Lao Binghe blurted out. "Shizun! Just now I think I saw people with faces." Shen Qingqiu rarely healed his words and kept it concise. "We follow." They closely tailed the few figures who were incongruous with the people and style of the surroundings, turning and twisting through the city, until they finally stopped before an alley. In total, there were 5 people with faces. They appeared to be 5 youths, each one equipped with noses and features. The 4 taller figures surrounded one on the ground, and they cursed and incessantly yelled words like "little mongrel" and "bastard," and were poured from their mouths. They completely failed to notice the 2 people behind them. "It looks like they can't see us," said Lao Binghe. He looked at Shen Qingqiu as if to ask, "Didn't you say Meng Mo was incapable of creating people with complete features?" Time for more angst! Shen Qingqiu heaved a sigh in his heart. Meng Mo indeed cannot create people using nightmares, but he didn't create these individuals. Lao Binghe looked more closely at their faces. Lao Binghe slowly turned his gaze toward them, although his expression didn't change much. In a flash, a drop of cold sweat dripped down his forehead. These are not illusions created by Meng Mo, said Shen Qingqiu. They are projections of real people from your memories. Meng Mo only awakened those reflections from the memories sleeping within your mind. But Lao Binghe could no longer hear him. He placed his hands on his temples, and it seemed as though his head was twitching. Shen Qingqiu knew that Lao Binghe's inner demons had already struck. Those 4 rowdy youths surrounded the child in the alley, who appeared to be only around 4 or 5 years old, as they punched and kicked him. The shabbily dressed child had covered his head with both arms and curled up on the ground, soundlessly taking the beating. It really made one worried that they would beat the young one to death. This little mongrel sure is blind, daring to enter our territory and snatching our food. Must be tired of living. Step on him, step on him. He's so pitiful, right? Hungry with nothing to eat, right? Beat him to death, and he won't have to worry about that. Loving his head hurt like it was splitting open. That small, frail figure on the ground was his young self from the past. Though the disheveled hair and blood-stained face, 2 bright eyes like stars, like sharp swords lancing forward, met his gaze. Lao Binghe was completely unable to look away. Pull yourself together, Shen Qingqiu said lowly. It's only an illusion. However, the terrifying thing about Meng Mo was that he specialized in summoning the human heart's deepest rage, terror, and misery in order to destroy a person's psychological defenses. To Lao Binghe, who had already activated his God Mode cheats, the power of 10,000 Meng Mos together would almost amount to little more than parlor tricks. But the Lao Binghe now, whose demonic blood had yet to awaken, was trapped in the dream realm and his dark memories. All he could see was his own powerlessness. Suddenly, the alley seemed distorted, transforming into another one. Not good, Shen Qingqiu thought. A second killing blow without time to repair. They were in a little broken-down hut. The hut only had 1 bed, a crooked little table with a dimly lit oil lamp on top, and a small wooden bench. On the bench lay a haggard old woman. With great effort, she tried to prop herself up, but from beginning to end, she was unable to do so. A small figure rushed from the outside. A tender-faced Lao Binghe, only a little over 10 years old, supported the woman. Around his neck hung that jade pendant. Mother, why are you getting up again? He asked anxiously. Didn't we say it's fine to rest? The woman coughed. Lying down doesn't help with anything. Might as well get up and wash clothes. I already finished washing, said little Lao Binghe. Mother, lie down and wait for me to finish simmering your medicine. You can work after you take it and get better. The woman's face was ashen, her sickness long beyond cure, and she had little time left to live. She smiled while patting Lao Binghe's head. Binghe is so sweet. Little Lao Binghe lifted his face, forcing himself to smile. Oh, what does Mother want to eat? These days I have less and less of an appetite. The woman paused and hesitantly added, The last time our house's young master threw out his white congee, I did wish for a bit of a taste. I wonder if the kitchens have any left. Little Lao Binghe vigorously nodded. I will go ask for Mother. Just asking is enough, the woman warned him again and again. If there's none left, then just make something light and soupy. As long as it fills the stomach, it's fine. Absolutely do not request anything from the chef. Lao Binghe promised profusely, then ran out like the wind, his feet clapping against the ground. After laying down for a while, the woman felt beneath her pillow for a needle and thread and started doing needlework. The lamplight in the hut became dimmer and dimmer. While Lao Binghe's mind was unclear, he reached out, trying to grasp something. Shen Qingqiu grabbed his hand. Lao Binghe, he said forcefully, look carefully. This isn't your mother, and you are no longer the helpless child that could only endure humiliation. One of the things that made this nightmare so lethal was that the more agitated the trapped victim became, the more damage it would do to their mind. Lao Binghe's presence, extreme instability, was terribly harmful to his spirit. Another dangerous thing that you needed to remember was that you absolutely could not attack the people who appeared in your dream realm. Every single person was formed from the mind and consciousness of the dream realm's host. As soon as you attacked them, you would also be attacking your own brain. Many people, not knowing this, so unable to control their emotions, attacked the people in the dream realm who hurt them in the past, and thereby sent themselves into a coma. If Lao Binghe fell into the state, Shen Qingqiu would of course also be trapped in the dream with him. The scene around them shifted erratically. This nightmare was a collection of Lao Binghe's misfortunes and traumas from his short decade-plus years of life. The scene suddenly transformed into little Lao Binghe pleading with the house chef to grant his adopted mother a bowl of congee before being ridiculed by the manor's young master. Then it became the time right after he joined Qingjing Peak, where he had been subjected to exclusion and spite by his numerous Shishong, his frail form straining as he swung a rusty axe or carried pails of water up the long stairs as his steps slowed more and more. Then the moment when his treasured jade pendant was snatched away, never to be found. The disordered scenes piled up as they came one after another without pause. The present Lao Binghe could neither see nor hear anything beyond the maelstrom of images and memories. Within his head there were only an ongoing explosion of hatred, despair, suffering, helplessness, and fury from those times, churning endlessly within his mind and chest. The only time to dispel the nightmare would be to undo the tangles in one's heart, thereby causing the nightmare to collapse in on itself. But Lao Binghe's fists were tightly clenched. Cracking sounds came from his fingers. His breathing grew increasingly, unsteadily. His eyes turned an unnatural red, and a faintly discernible current of spiritual power coursed around him, as if his desire to attack were growing near irresistible. Standing near him was extremely dangerous, thought Shen Qingqiu. Don't attack them, Shen Qingqiu said harshly. Even if you hit them, you'll be the one who's injured. Lao Binghe could no longer hear his words. He lifted his right arm, and a powerful spiritual blast blew forth from his palm, hurriedly straight forward to destroy the people laughing freely within the illusion. Shen Qingqiu cried out within his heart. No matter how painful, his body still understood its duties. He rushed over, throwing himself before the illusions, blocking the spiritual blast head-on. It struck his lower abdomen. In that instant, Shen Qingqiu felt like he'd been stomped on by an elephant, his vision going dark. If it weren't for the stream realm, he would have vomited up endless amounts of blood. As expected from the protagonist. Shen Qingqiu's face was drenched with tears. Lao Binghe obviously was only a young disciple. How could he release such a powerful spiritual blast? It seemed that ever since he had unlocked the OC function, not only had not accomplished any grand achievements, the only thing he'd done aside from blocking blows with block more blows, and also block some blows. He was doing just grand as a sacrificial meat shield, wasn't he? With this attack of Lao Binghe's, the illusion around them was broken, and the people and objects all shattered like glass into thousands of shards. The illusionary landscape transformed into a remote, forested wilderness. The sky was a dark blue, and the lone cold moon hung high and golden above their heads. Lao Binghe's mind instantly cleared. He first stared blankly, speechlessly, as the half-kneeling Shen Qingqiu, who was unable to stand. Then he lowered his head to look at his own palm, where a shred of remaining spiritual power was still flowing through his fingertips. Vaguely remembering what he'd just done, his face turned stark white. Lao Binghe threw himself to Shen Qingqiu's side to support him, both worried and regretful. Jason, why didn't you hit back? With Shen Qingqiu's level of spiritual power, he could have been wholly capable of returning Lao Binghe's spiritual blast, forcing their powers to collide and directly pitting them against each other till the stronger one won. Not only would he have dissolved Lao Binghe's attack, he could have deflected it back at him. Foolish child, Shen Qingqiu said simply, expressing his innermost feelings. He then continued weakly. This point was to ensure you wouldn't be injured. If I deflected it back and injured you, what would have been the purpose of that? That frail voice made Lao Binghe want to strike his own heart and kill himself. But the one who was injured is Shizun! If it hadn't been long since they fought these 3 matches against the Demon Realm, and Shizun had already, again, been injured for his sake, and this time by his own hand. Shen Qingqiu saw the self-blame and misery on the child's face, about to overflow, and unable to stand it, he said consolingly, Can your cultivation compare with mine? Even if this master took several more blows, it wouldn't matter. Lao Binghe would have preferred Shen Qingqiu to be as he had in the past, and vent his anger by viciously beating and cursing him. Even if he were utterly ignored, scorned, and ridiculed, it would have been easier to his heart. On the contrary, Shen Qingqiu's tone and words were unerringly gentle, and so Lao Binghe was struck dumb and speechless, completely at a loss for what to do. After a long moment, he said in a low voice, It's my fault. The early Lao Binghe indeed walked the path of a brainless Moe White Lotus. Shen Qingqiu figured he'd once again fallen into the self-flattering pattern of an obnoxious people-pleaser. It has nothing to do with you, Shen Qingqiu explained patiently. The way the demons are extremely unpredictable and impossible to guard against. However, if you don't want to run into similar trouble in the future, you must become stronger. These words were spoken purely out of his personal feelings. This was a world of immortals and monsters, where the strong ate the weak. Becoming the stronger was the only way to guarantee that you wouldn't become cannon fodder to be pushed around by the world. Lao Binghe's thoughts shifted, and without speaking, he suddenly raised his head, fixing his gaze steadily on Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu's heart thumped. Lao Binghe's eyes, dark like obsidian, flashed with a light more dazzling than the reflection of the moon and the stars. That look in his eyes, that kind of protagonist look, full of resolute conviction and blazing fighting spirit. Could it be I've already become the protagonist guiding star in his life path going forward? Lao Binghe felt a proper kneeling position by Shen Qingqiu's side. I understand, he said in a strong, clear voice. Wait, what did you understand this time? Can you not say only half of your words every time? Tell me the rest! Shen Qingqiu didn't notice that as Lao Binghe spoke the sentence, he didn't use this disciple to address himself. Lao Binghe tightly clenched his fist. This kind of thing, he said, enunciating each word. I definitely won't let it happen to a second time. Letting Shizhen protect his weak self, letting Shizhen be injured because of him. This kind of thing absolutely would not happen again. Okay! There was a very loud motorcycle. Okay. Shen Qingqiu let out an, oh, what's going on? He suddenly had the protagonist is protecting me. I feel so safe kind of feeling. What exactly was going on? Safe? Your ass! This person will carve you into a human stick in the future. Wake up! Shen Qingqiu was filled with a plethora of complex emotions. Fuck! Originally, this conviction to become stronger to protect my important person would have definitely inspired by the protagonist seeing the female lead's frail, lovely, and delicately panting form after she sustained an injury while helping him. Was the system laying all the emotional labor associated with the female lead's role on Shen Qingqiu? To hand out the wrong script at this point. Also, you're giving me extra parts. Could you at least offer me complimentary meals? Taking on the main character's long and tedious lines while being paid an extra thin and meager wages. This was labor exploitation! Out of the selfishness, Shen Qingqiu managed to lift a hand and pat Lao Binghe on the head. Lao Binghe's originally stubborn gaze froze, as if a handful of clear spring water had doused his flickering anger. Shen Qingqiu thought for a moment. Actually, you need not worry too much. If you cannot... I used the Shen Yuan voice. Whoop. Shen Qingqiu thought for a moment. Actually, you need not worry too much. If you cannot become strong, I will stay by your side and protect you. Instead of letting Lao Binghe become the pitch-black basket case of a young man who made destroying the world his personal mission, it would be better if he could stay the delicate little White Lotus forever. Shen Qingqiu absolutely wouldn't have minded keeping this iteration of Lao Binghe by his side and taking care of him for a lifetime. These were his simple thoughts, but due to his person hearing these words, they didn't sound so simple. Lao Binghe was wholly dumbfounded. No one had ever made such a straightforward and impassioned promise to him. Even though the world was large, few people in it could say, "You need not become strong. I am here, and of course I won't let you be bullied." And they weren't empty words. If Shizhen said he could do it, he could. He had already proven time and again with his actions that he would rather sustain grievous injury than let Lao Binghe suffer even a tiny bit of harm. Still, the sense of indulgence within these words was too much to bear. As the first surge of warmth slowly subsided, a burning heat crawled up Lao Binghe's face. Shen Qingqiu coughed for a while, miserably discovering that coughing up blood within the dream realm was impossible, then pinched Lao Binghe's arm. All right, help me up. Lao Binghe realized that where his wrist had been pinched neither hurt nor itched. Instead, it tingled. Immediately, he also realized his thoughts were overstepping and scolded himself a little. Thinking such nonsense At a time like this, how disrespectful to Shizun. He hurriedly organized his thoughts and did as he was told. Suddenly, a voice sounded out of nowhere. That hoarse, aged voice made an inquisitive noise and said, "You're quite something to actually break through this elder's barrier, boy." That voice echoed all around them. It was impossible to determine which direction it had come from. This level's boss had finally appeared. Lao Binghe was supporting Shen Qingqiu and didn't rate his feet, his gaze weary. Meng Mo had appeared while Shen Qingqiu was injured, and things were not looking good. Lao Binghe resolved to himself that if Meng Mo were to attack, even with his paltry strength, he would still give it his all to impede him and earn Shen Qingqiu every possible chance of survival. The instant he made his decision, the voice spoke again. "Come over here and let this elder see what kind of young hero is capable of such a thing." Lao Binghe looked at Shen Qingqiu. The latter's entire mind was filled with the thought of, I finished my friendship performance. I can leave for work now." And he was incredibly cheerful. He even felt like teasing his student. "The senior is asking for the young hero," he said. "Why don't you reply?" Lao Binghe's face reddened. He turned and spoke in a clear voice. "You flatter me. The barrier was broken by my master's strength alone." The voice humped as if in disdain. Shen Qingqiu knew why he humped. Though he had blocked an attack for Lao Binghe, this was Lao Binghe's dream realm, and so Lao Binghe had needed to wrest back control of his consciousness before the entire nightmare could be broken. But Shen Qingqiu couldn't be bothered to explain. The voice spoke. "This elder wants you to come over, boy, but I don't want this ordinary cultivator from Kanchong Mountain to hear our conversation. I'll have him sleep first." As expected, the circumstances were exactly as the same when Ning Ying Ying had played the role in the original story. Everyone aside from Lao Binghe would be waved off stage by Meng Mo. A headache instantly came over Shen Qingqiu, and he collapsed heavily. Alarmed, Lao Binghe gathered him in his arms. "Shizun?" he called. "Shizun!" No need to worry, said Meng Mo. "This elder only sent him into a dream within a dream. He's just in a deeper sleep. Get over here, you." This time, it was possible to discern where the voice was coming from a pitch-black cave off to the west. Lao Binghe couldn't wake Shen Qingqiu. He carefully laid his master on the ground, then turned and spoke in the direction of the voice. "My master acknowledged you as senior, so I must treat you with the same courtesy. I hope you won't cause Shizun more trouble." Meng Mo chuckled. "I saw your memories, boy. This master of yours does not treat you well. Why not just let me get rid of him? I would be doing you a favor." The memories of Meng Mo had looked into were mostly those of the interactions between the original Shen Qingqiu and Lao Binghe. Those memories were indeed the greatest in number, but Lao Binghe shook his head. "Shizun isn't like you say, senior. In addition, no matter what, Shizun is my honored master. He can treat me however he likes, but as his disciple, I cannot disrespect him." Meng Mo humphed. "How backward! The human realm's righteous path is full of this type of hypocritical morality. So what if he's honored or not? Your master or whatever. If someone mistreats or harms me, they should be killed. He knew your cultivation was not sufficient to face Skyhammer, yet he sent you out for that match. Were his intentions not clear?" "At that time, even I didn't believe I could win," said Lao Binghe. "But Shizun believed in me. Not only did he give me an opportunity, he even encouraged me during the match, and in the end, I truly did win." The next sentence he said silently and only to himself. "For my sake, Shizun blocked 2 attacks for me. His goodwill is genuine." Meng Mo had only randomly skimmed some memory fragments. He didn't understand Shen Qingqiu's behavior, nor did he want to try unraveling the issue, though he was quite pleased with Lao Binghe's aptitude. "You, boy, are a person who values loyalty and bonds." "Not even 1,000th of how Shizun does towards me," said Lao Binghe. If Meng Mo had a mouth, its corner would have been twitching. He opted to change the topic. After murmuring for a second, he said, "This elder senses that within your body something is being suppressed. Even though I cannot tell exactly what it is, it must be something surprisingly remarkable." Lao Binghe was a little shocked. "What sort of thing is it that you can't even tell?" Meng Mo chuckled. "My race produces master cultivators in droves. It is not impossible that that a demon more illustrious than this elder sealed something within your body. In any case, Mengmo surely wasn't so eager to throw away his several hundred-year-old reputation that he'd waste time tricking an impoverished teenager who had nothing. Nevertheless, Lao Binghao stared in disbelief. Does Senior mean that this thing in my body is related to demons? What, are you displeased? Mengmo asked sneeringly, eager to sever any connections with the demon race. Lao Binghe's state of shock didn't last for too long. His thoughts whirled rapidly before he declared, The demon realm does many evil of all kinds and has injured my master multiple times. Naturally, I cannot associate with them. Mengmo became depressed. Can you go 3 sentences without mentioning that master of yours, boy? Let this elder guess. The next thing you want to ask is, may I ask the senior if there is a method to remove this something from my body? Lao Binghe smiled wryly. Even if I ask, would the senior tell me? Oh my god, these voices. Oh, I'm gonna lose my voice tomorrow. I just know it. Mengmo laughed boisterously. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but it is certainly beyond me. I can't even see it clearly. How can I tell you how to remove it? If not for the fact I couldn't make sense of you, boy, I would have already killed you both. Why else would I care to drag this out for so long? You think I'd have that much time on my hands? Lao Binghe didn't speak. He was thinking. You don't even have a body anymore. You're just a shade being a parasite in others' dream realms. Mengmo didn't have time. Who did? Mengmo, unaware that Lao Binghe was internally ridiculing him, continued, Removing it would be impossible for me, but suppressing it is not out of the question. Senior is willing to teach me how? Lao Binghe asked tentatively. Not only can this elder teach you how to suppress it, he can teach you much more, said Mengmo leadingly. The implication was exceedingly blatant, and Lao Binghe understood. His heart sank. You want me to cultivate the demonic path? As his tone turned cold, Mengmo's temper flared. What's wrong with cultivating the demonic path? If you cultivate demonic path, the thing in your body will bring great benefits to your cultivation. You can leap 1,000 kilometers in a day. You could stand above the thousands. There are not empty words. With your time, your power could overturn and sweep away the entirety of the 3 realms, and the heavens, and the earth within, and it would all be simple. At that last part, Lao Binghe's heart jolted. 1,000 kilometers in a day, stand above thousands. The entirety of the 3 realms swept away before him. That was to say, he'd become stronger, the strongest. He quickly rejected the thought. Shen Qingqiu hated the way the demons of the demons more than anything. If he couldn't resist this Mengmo's temptations to become the demonic cultivator, how could he face his master? Whether Shen Qingqiu would be thunderously angry or drown in depression, either way, Lao Binghe definitely didn't want to find out. No. He resolutely refuted. Mengmo sneered. If you refuse to learn from me, you won't be able to suppress the demonic energy in your body. It's hidden deeply now, and you're fine because it can't be seen. But this elder senses that the seal in your body is weakening. One day in the future, when that power breaks through, how will the good Shifu yours treat you? He who abhors evil and makes eliminating demons and upholding justice his mission. Even as Mengmo articulated Lao Binghe's greatest worry, Lao Binghe clenched his teeth. This junior is but an ordinary cultivator, from whom achieving even foundation establishment is full of perils and hardships. Why do you insist I cultivate the demonic path? This question was way too high level. Other than the author, who could explain away all the greatest geniuses and masters, were always crying and pleading for the protagonist to be their apprentice, disciple, son-in-law? No, in fact, even most authors probably didn't even know the answer to this eternal riddle. You should appreciate others' kindness, boy. This elder conceded that you are extraordinary. Wouldn't you rather that all my knowledge vanished like smoke among with my physical body? How many people would beg for it for no avail? Oh man, I really do feel like I'm gonna lose my voice after this. But it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it, I swear. Lao Binghe showed no feeling on his face. His refusal to reply, Mengmo felt a rush of ominous premonition. Sure enough, the next time Lao Binghe opened his mouth, he did so with pure and harmless smile. Surely Senior isn't so eager to teach me because he's unwilling to let his knowledge vanish without a successor, right? He asked, slow and composed. I do need my voice, but thankfully I don't have anything to do with my voice tomorrow, so if I do lose it, it won't be the end of the world. Mengmo cried to himself, Not good! If one lives by feeding off of others' dream realms, and one often has to change hosts, one's spirit will weaken and suffer damage during the transfers, said Lao Binghe. But if one were to live long-term within a sect host's body, one could instead preserve and nurture the spirit to stabilize it. He paused. Senior Mengmo, could it be that you're already approaching your limit, and that's why you picked me to be the host that you'll raise? Having already been seen through, Mengmo neither denied it nor became angry. Instead, he grandly admitted, That's right! Who'd have thought, boy, that you were actually so well-learned and knowledgeable that you'd even know something like that? Lao Binghe's expression was unperturbed. Unable to intuit what this boy was thinking, Mengmo continued, However, don't assume that this elder absolutely must have you as a host. Wonderfully gifted demons number in the millions. Any one of them would beg on their knees for the special honor. You're the one who should be carefully consider whether you can afford to miss the opportunity. In truth, after all these years, Mengmo's spirit had steadily degenerated. He had originally resided within a demonic device and had happily lived there. With 180 years of meditation, he would have been brimming with energy again. But it had just so happened that Xia Huling, unaware of this, had at the end of the series of absolute coincidences used the device as a weapon and unloaded it onto Lao Binghe. Consequently, Mengmo had not enough strength to search for another host. But on the road to his doom, he had unexpectedly discovered that, buried within the body and consciousness of the boy he newly resided in, lay concealed a faintly discernible yet incredible power. He had been ecstatic. How could he have let this go? He had already decided that no matter how adamantly Lao Binghe refused, he'd wheedle and pester, make threats and promises. Even if he meant exhausting every single method he had, he would persuade the boy to learn the demonic techniques in order to make Lao Binghe's body and consciousness an even more suitable residence for him. This elder will give you time, so think carefully, said Mengmo. Otherwise I'll trap you and your master's consciousness within the dream realm forever. This elder is capable of that much. Lao Binghe's head snapped up. For an instant, a cold light flashed in the youth's eyes. Mengmo froze, intimidated. Oh, okay. Water. Right now, you're discussing terms with me, and you're free to say anything. Lao Binghe's gentle and humble demeanor from the moments before was entirely gone, his voice bitterly cold. But if you harm Shizun, any agreement is void. Oh yeah, I'll probably make some tea after this. I'll definitely make some tea after this. I have some lying around somewhere. I'll find it. I just didn't know that I'd have to do a Mengmo today. Honestly, I completely forgot about this portion of the book. So I thought we were actually going to be doing some angsty stuff today. Instead, we're doing Mengmo voice. I forgot about Mengmo. I don't know how, but it happened. Mengmo was frozen for a long time before he finally returned to himself. Stunned, he had actually been terrorized by the presence of an ordinary, insignificant cultivator of the human realm. He had been intimidated souls throughout the three realms for hundreds of years. Even in the miserable battle where his corporeal body had been destroyed, he had not once lost to anyone in terms of presence. How could he have known that in the future generations of this presence would be called, the protagonist exclusive, Aura Badassery? The cave exploded with a sudden bellowing laughter. Boy, you really have quite the temper. As the ancient voice said those words, Lao Binghe felt his limbs become heavy, the scenery around him spinning before he was plunged into darkness. In a flash and a start, Lao Binghe awoke in the woodshed, his back utterly drenched with sweat. At the same time, Shen Qingqiu also sprang up in bed, like a corpse becoming alive after death. Head dizzy and vision spinning, he gasped for breath for a while, and then only then did he relax. Horrible, 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 horrible enough to die! How come? How come then, in the original work, Meng Mo dragged Ning Ying Ying into a dream within a dream? Her dream was a comforting childhood memory wherein her parents let her pick flowers and ride horses. How come on his term, his verse have been surrounded by a fist-sized man eating wasps, then been dashing madly through the narrow passages of a tomb while being closely pursued by a giant ball of fire? The most terrifying thing was that, in the final part of the dream within the dream, Meng Mo had woven in Shen Qingqiu's greatest fear. Within the damp, dark dungeon, he had been suspended in midair by a ring around his waist, unable to feel his limbs. When he opened his mouth, no sound came out, and he could only helplessly hiss. His entire body burned with pain. Only after an unknown length of time had passed had the sound of a stone door opening drift from outside the dungeon. Footsteps neither fast nor slow steadily approached. Then the shadow of a person was cast on the floor before him. On an ink-black helm, exquisite motifs were embroidered in silver thread. From that person emanated an ice-cold pressure, more stifling than the demon's airless darkness. Shen Qingqiu couldn't clearly see that person's face, but he knew very well who they were. Meng Mo truly deserved to be a legend among demons. That dream realm had been far, far too realistic. Even now, the damp odor of decay seemed to linger in Shen Qingqiu's nose, nauseating him. Shen Qingqiu managed to keep sitting for a while, then he rolled off the bed and began to retch. Ding dong! Now of all fucking times, the system notification sprang up. Congratulations on completing the scenario, Meng Mo's Barrier. The system rewards you 500 satisfaction points. Please continue to work hard. Shen Qingqiu made a stop gesture and still had enough in him to try settling debts. Let's have a proper discussion, he said. When you threatened to deduct satisfaction points, it wasn't 500, right? Why not set it at 500 for both? Are large punishments and small rewards really fair? And I went through an extra scenario of the dream within a dream, so why haven't you awarded any extra B points to me? System, don't play dead! Let's sign a new contract! At this moment, someone had slammed open the door to the bamboo house's front door and rushed inside like a gust of wind. Shisen! Shen Qingqiu knew who it was from the sound. He miserably rolled his eyes. He really didn't want to see that face again right now. Lao Bing had already thrown himself to Shen Qingqiu's side, overflowing with anxiety. Shisen, how are you? Do you feel the least bit unwell? Truthfully, not terrible. If you could stay a bit further away, I'd feel even better. Shen Qingqiu averted his gaze with unyielding strength and poise, stood by himself. Everything is well within this master. Lao Binghe had wanted to help him up, yet his hand had been reflexively shoved away. He couldn't help but freeze. Shen Qingqiu didn't notice these small shifts in Lao Binghe's emotions. He tidied his clothes, verifying to himself that even though he wore only inner robes, his image remained spotless. Did that Meng Mo trouble you for your further afterward? Trouble my ass! Meng Mo would have been falling over himself to lick Lao Binghe's boots. Shen Qingqiu was asking despite knowing. Lao Binghe hesitated for a bit before he replied. The demon elder's spiritual strength seems to have been lacking. This disciple expelled him from the dream realm after a short while. Shisen, did you encounter anything inside the dream within a dream? Even if I did encounter something, could this master not handle it? Shen Qingqiu boasted shamelessly. Of course he couldn't handle it! Even now the shadow of being a human stick remained. With Lao Binghe so close to him, his entire body was tingling, and he couldn't help averting his gaze to suppress his fear. Unsure of the reason for this, Lao Binghe only saw that Shen Qingqiu's expression was odd, his gaze no longer calmly looking straight at him like he usually did these days. It made his heart both fretful and anxious. Luckily, Shen Qingqiu adjusted his attitude with superlative quickness, remembering that he was a teacher and what he should do at this time. In the next instant, he reached out and took Lao Binghe's wrist. Being attacked by a demon is no joke, he said firmly. This master will examine you for a moment. We cannot be negligent. Yes, said Lao Binghe obediently, his wrist firmly held. His heart had just known a moment of ease, but now it was once more suspended. On the off chance Shen Qingqiu uncovered Meng Mo and exposed the particularity within his body afterward, although Shen Qingqiu diligently examined Lao Binghe for a time, he didn't detect anything off. Of course he didn't. Meng Mo had several hundred years' worth of skill and experience, and his celebrated reputation wasn't exaggerated in the slightest. However, Shen Qingqiu still had to go through the motions. His examination was fruitless, but nevertheless repeatedly urged Lao Binghe to visit Chankao Peak and Chongding Peak the next day to let other people examine him, and finally to absolutely say something of the issue arose. Yet, if Lao Binghe had no intention of leaving, with the appearance of someone full of worries, he started and stopped speaking several times before asking, "She's and demons, are they all wicked beyond redemption? Must every last one of them be exterminated?" Shen Qingqiu didn't reply to this question right away. He stood in place, indeed finding it difficult to answer. Seeing Lao Binghe petrified, forcibly keeping calm while also somewhat anticipating his teacher's answer, Shen Qingqiu spoke slowly. "Humans can be good or bad, so naturally demons can be good or evil. We often see demons victimizing people, but that doesn't mean that there aren't cases where human harm innocent demons. Don't push too much weight on race." This was the first time Lao Bing had heard a teacher express this kind of opinion. He listened in a daze, heart thumping wildly. "Season means, even if someone is closely connected to demons, that doesn't mean that the heavens find him intolerable. Is that right?" "How can you claim that they're intolerable to the heavens in the first place?" Shen Qingqiu countered. "If they are intolerable, why would the heavens let them exist? Who has the authority to say whether they ought to be tolerated or not?" During this chain of questions, Lao Binghe's eyes gradually lit up. There was within him a faint sense of burning passion. "Lao Binghe, you may choose to ignore the words of this master tells you from here on out," Shen Qingqiu said at last. "But you must remember that what I've told you here today, in this world there is nothing intolerable to the heavens. This is true for all races, as it is true for humans." At this time, though, Lao Binghe's heart leaned towards the righteous path. He wasn't a pendant. In any case, whatever it was that was within him couldn't be removed, so why not put it to good use? He absolutely had to become stronger. So strong that he would never be powerless. Strong enough that he could protect Shizun from any hand that dare reach for him. Seeing Lao Binghe's eyes so dazzlingly bright, Shen Qingqiu couldn't imagine what he was thinking, but his own thoughts were a jumbled mess. His advice at this time wasn't coming purely from a place of having developed an addiction to being the sage guiding the protagonist's life journey. The idea of the heavens' magnanimity was a universal concept, older than time itself, and it had been recycled like reheated old rice for decades by the historical wuxia and shenxi genres without the slightest hint of progress. But in this world of ocean-deep hatred between humans and demons, who were unable to coexist and engaged in countless great wars in the past up to the present, the concept was extremely unconventional. Anyone who espoused it risked unilateral condemnation. As someone of mixed lineage, it had been extremely difficult for the original Lao Binghe to avoid being impacted by human hatred of demons, and vice versa. Since the greater half of his life had been harsh and full of misfortunes, he had even begun to despair and think that perhaps the world and heavens both found his existence intolerable, that he should have never been born. Shen Qingqiu hoped that, from this point forward, these words could plant a seed within Lao Binghe's heart and broaden his perspective, that in the future, when facing the truth of his heritage, he could remain optimistic and not take attacks on his lineage to heart. Perhaps then his behavior wouldn't trend so extreme, and he wouldn't become bent on taking revenge on the world. Perhaps, if someday in the future Lao Binghe had to face a Shen Qingqiu who would throw him down into the endless abyss, he would be able to understand that this betrayal wasn't his fault. If that was possible, then even if the scenario arrived and the system forced Shen Qingqiu to say lines like, "Humans and demons cannot coexist. Their hatred is ocean deep and cannot be overcome. You fucker, hurry up and die!" Also, hello, this... I look up and hello, Steam Gray. Hello. Oh god. Oh god, I have to find my place again. "Humans and demons cannot coexist. Their hatred is ocean deep and cannot be overcome. You fucker, hurry up and die." Thereby slapping him so hard that he sent himself flying. Well, that wouldn't be that. Now that the atmosphere had grown heavy, Shen Qingqiu felt he'd gone overboard with his cool act. With his terror of embarrassment about to erupt, he coughed once more. That said, demons are naturally gifted with spiritual strengths, far more so than humans," he said. Their strength could be used for good, and it was dedicated to the righteous path, to the common people, then how could that not be a good thing? It was. No need to apologize. I'm very happy when people can come in. So welcome, Gray. And yes, the you fucker was perfect. It was absolutely. Oh, the F-bombs in this. They happen frequently, but they happen in a way it's perfect. It's very hilarious. Demons had exceptional talent for cultivation and absolutely crushed the human realm in that arena. As the races were different, so too was their energy systems. Humans relied on the spiritual ki, where demons relied on demonic ki. Though, oh, no, wait, it's chi, isn't it? Fuck. Oh no, I said ki. Every book should have one you fucker snuck in. Humans relied on spiritual chi, while demons relied on demonic chi, although Shen Qingqiu reckoned that the two were basically the same, with only the color names being distinct. Maybe the demon realm had a good feng shui or something, but the vast majority of demons were born fully charged with demonic chi. At age 3, they could rip apart a human with their bare hands, and at age 8, they could split mountains and crack stone. This was a bit of an exaggeration. However, the truth was that many humans only had mediocre aptitude. Even after cultivating for several decades, they can often only achieve the skill level of a small demon infant. Even more humans were like dried up ponds, their spiritual strength practically a perfect egg, i.e. 0. These humans were often said to be lacking in spiritual roots, or absent the lot for immortality. It couldn't get worse than that. If it weren't for the humans' comparative love of propagating, and for the demons being generally sparse in number, the human realm would have long ago been colonized by demons. Honestly, they were so just coasting on the fact that demon family planning was so strict. After suffering the torments of this world-changing journey, Shen Qingqiu hadn't slept the entire night. 2 dark bags had already appeared under his eyes. He wasted his hand. It's very late. If there's nothing else, then go and rest. Lao Binghe obediently asked to be excused. But he hadn't walked far when he heard Shen Qingqiu call from behind. Come back. Lao Binghe immediately turned back. Does Shizhen have any other instructions? The dorms are that way, said Shen Qingqiu. Why are you walking in the other direction? The disciples' dormitories and the woodshed were both a left turn out the door, yet Lao Binghe turned to the right. This disciple wants to go to the kitchen first to prepare tomorrow's breakfast for Shizhen, said Lao Binghe. Shen Qingqiu was in a bind. He really wanted to eat Lao Binghe's breakfast, but having a child cook for him instead of sleeping when he was already so late at night? Didn't that sound like Cinderella and her stepmother? Either way, it seemed inhumane. In the end, Shen Qingqiu's conscience went over his stomach. He coughed. Nonsense! It's the middle of the night. What is there to cook? Go back to sleep. Lao Binghe knew his master was worried about him not resting enough, and agreed with a smile, but he still planned to sneak off to the kitchen to work later. Shen Qingqiu wanted to ask him if he was still sleeping in the woodshed, but after mulling it over for a moment, he concluded that the youths still had their dignity. Asking him outright would be embarrassing. Moreover, even if he had Lao Binghe sleep in the disciples' dorms, the other students would take Meng Fan's lead and bully him. Steal blankets and hide his shoes and whatnot? The poor thing. Tomorrow, pack your things and come here, said Shen Qingqiu before Lao Binghe left. At first, Lao Binghe didn't understand what he meant. Shizhen? There's a side room in the bamboo house. Starting tomorrow, you can move in there. And Lao Binghe lived a little closer. Then in the future, it would have been easier for him to make breakfast and clean up the house. Shen Qingqiu's adaptability was, as always, incredible as a record-breaking dick. Just a moment ago, he had been unable to even look at Lao Binghe in the face, but now he dared to scheme as to how to make the great protagonist wait on him hand and foot, serve him tea, carrying water, wash his clothes, fold blankets, etc. Being in the middle of fantasizing, he hadn't noticed the protagonist's reaction. Suddenly, Lao Binghe pounced on him like a tiger, capturing him in a tight embrace. Caught off guard, Shen Qingqiu jumped in surprise. Then his face reddened. For the first time in his life, someone had wrapped him in a full-body embrace, and it wasn't warm and gentle jade-skinned maiden, but a youth brimming with tyrannical energy. Oh! Shizhen! Overwhelmed with happiness, Lao Binghe hugged him around the neck and refused to let go, crying in his ear over and over. Shen Qingqiu didn't know where to put his hands. After floundering for a bit, he placed them on Lao Binghe's head and stroked his hair. "All right, you've cried out to me, hugged me, and made all this racket, and you aren't even embarrassed. You're already so big. It's not like you're a 10-year-old child. How do you think this looks?" Lao Binghe hadn't thought about it deeply. When it was put that way, he suddenly grew ashamed. If he hadn't been overcome by a torrent of joy, he would never dare treat his normally aloof and removed Shizen like this. Though reluctant, he hurried to peel himself from Shen Qingqiu's body, his whole face red. "Yes, this disciple has overstepped." When it came to asking for hugs, children under the age of 10 were moe, but 15-year-old Lao Binghe was still moe. With a fresh, tender face like this handsome little sprout's, anything you did would be moe. Lao Binghe floundered for a while, at first a little flustered, but then he noticed Shen Qingqiu's complexion didn't look particularly good. Although Shen Qingqiu had the immortal body of a cultivator, he was haunted by old injuries and a lingering poison. Then, because of Lao Binghe, he'd been dragged into Mengmo's dream realm. He hadn't rested properly and was at his limit, so of course he looked a bit haggard. Lao Binghe didn't dare interfere with Shen Qingqiu's rest any longer and grudgingly said his goodbyes. Nevertheless, he didn't return to the woodshed, though this time he made sure to take a detour before going to the kitchen. He promised himself that for the next long while, he would carefully watch over his master's diet and repercussion. As soon as Lao Binghe stepped out of the room, a system notification arrived. Protagonist satisfaction points, plus 50. Shen Qingqiu was mystified. Why add another 50? System lag? Or had the system discovered its conscience and concluded that it had given him too little before? Whatever. He was exhausted, so what if the points were added? To this point, there was no way his admittedly great self had earned that 50 with a single hug. The next day, Shen Qingqiu hadn't yet slept as long as he wanted before the fragrant scent of fish and rice wafted into his room and tempted him awake. Outside the bamboo house, Lao Binghe had spent long hours preparing a meal with utmost care. The scent drew in great number of Qingjing Peak disciples who were used to eating bland food. They hid off to the side, snooping. Enraged, Mingfan and the others chewed their sleeve hems while watching the scene unfold, especially when Shen Qingqiu sat at the table and affectionately sang praises to Lao Binghe for his efforts and handiwork. As the two blissfully smiled at each other, their audience grief and resentment reached its peak. Utterly shameless to use the litigious schemes of unorthodox methods to encourage Shizen's favor. That evening, when Lao Binghe moved his things to the side room in Shen Qingqiu's house, every last one of Qingjing Peak disciples had bullied Lao Binghe were wiped out. It was as if they'd been struck by lightning from a clear sky, leaving their corpses scattered across the field. Though the words were moved his things, in truth it was only Lao Binghe moving himself. From the beginning, he never really had anything in the woodshed. His pillow? He rested his head upon a bundle of straw he found there. Blankets? His outer robes had covered him. And of course, Shen Qingqiu had prepared the real deal for him already. Shen Qingqiu had always thought that Lao Binghe's life was unbearably miserable. Just a textbook case of child abuse. Kanchong mountain sect was one of the major sects in the cultivation world. How could people's hearts have grown so dark in such a place? How could their resources be so lacking? That night, Lao Binghe lay on a normal bed for the first time in his life. Before, he had laid in a wooden basin floating down the icy river, then on a damp, cold ground, then between noisy streets, and then even in mountain caves while roughing it out in the wild. It had become normal. Conversely, now that he was sleeping on a soft and tidy bamboo bed, his entire body felt light, floaty, like none of this was real. It was especially unreal when he thought of Shen Qingqiu sleeping in the main room, just a wall away. That night, perhaps because Lao Binghe had too much on his mind, Mengmo didn't appear in his dream realm. So Lao Binghe remained composed and waited. Sure enough, a few days later, Mengmo appeared once more. This time Mengmo didn't set up some mysterious barrier, having not intended to hide in the first place. Instead, he appeared directly in Lao Binghe's dream, though he did so in the form of a cloud of black mist. The cloud of black mist expanded and contracted before Lao Binghe's eyes, endlessly transforming, and the aged voice echoed from within it, "What have you decided in these 3 days, boy?" Does Senior Mengmo not know my decision?" Lao Binghe replied. Mengmo chuckled. You've chosen a path that you definitely won't regret. Remember this day, boy. Today is the beginning of your meteoric rise. What youth didn't dream of meteoric success? Mengmo's words rang with grand heroic spirit, but Lao Binghe remained unmoved. He only cupped his fist and bowed. This junior has one more request. What is it? Out with it! Hurry up and finish so you can finally become my apprentice! Mengmo urged him on, without realizing that he was being far too optimistic. That is exactly what this junior wanted to speak about, said Lao Binghe. My master treated me with the utmost kindness. I really can't apprentice under anyone else without his permission. Fine! Mengmo interrupted before he could finish at the end of his patience. This elder won't demand the titles of master's apprentice. Is that enough? Had any extraordinary master ever come away with a worse deal? He was falling over himself to teach someone his people's techniques, yet he wouldn't even get to hear a student call him Shifu. How was his plight any different from that an absolutely devoted, yet barely suffering concubine who couldn't even gain official status? Lao Binghe smiled. Many thanks to Senior. He wasn't remotely willing to call anyone other than Shen Qingqiu Shizun. As he eyed Lao Binghe, Mengmo was sure that if he had a physical body, his nose would have gone crooked with rage. This Lao Binghe was all cute and obedient in front of his master, just like a little white lotus. So then why was he so hard to deal with for other people? Two completely different faces. He was practically a different person. This elder is going to die of rage! Oh, and that's the end of the chapter. Yay! Oh my gosh, my voice. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Anyway, that was the end of the chapter. Archivist, how did you feel about that? Congrats on getting to the end of the chapter. Yes! Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm drinking water right now. I plan to have a lot more and some hot tea after this. Oh man, I forgot I forgot this chapter existed. But it's a pretty important chapter, actually. I'm not actually following the story, but your actual reading's really fun. LMAO, thank you! I try to make it fun, because, like, it's one thing to read a book out loud, you know, and, like, you can do it like you do in, like, a school setting where everybody reads it and they're very bored and they're not actually paying attention to what they're saying, you know, or you can have it like an audiobook where, like, it's very professional, but, you know, there's pretty much one tone to it all. I wanted to kind of give it the frenetic energy that I have while reading it in my head out loud, so it's very fun, and I'm very happy that people are enjoying it. But yes, this was a very important chapter. I'm surprised I forgot about it. Yeah, thank you for telling. Yes, I love reading this book so much. And again, this was a very important chapter. There's actually a bit of foreshadowing that I didn't realize reading the original version was there. It's for something in a later part of it's one of the later chapters, but the fact that it's like, oh no, it's parallels. Oh no. There's a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of very important stuff to come being set up here. And I'm very happy. I'm very happy of how this one turned out, even if my voice is gonna get rough. So I think this is where we're gonna call it for the night. Good night, archivists. I hope you had as much fun as I did. We're going to do Killer Frequencies on Thursday. Killer Frequencies is a indie game wherein you are a radio host on a local like talk show, and there is a serial killer murderer on the loose, and your callers are asking for assistance in like hiding and like trying to get away from the killer. So I'm very excited for it. It sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. I hope you all. Oops, I dropped something. I hope you all can join us for that stream. It'll be on Thursday. It'll be at 7 p.m. if I can make it. And yeah, I'm very excited for it. So I hope you will be too. Have a good night, archivists. Good night. Bye bye.